Hey Jordan, Jim here with you again, aka The Edge. Wow, you've inspired me to do 2 videos in a very short amount of time. This one I want to address your video on the virgin birth. For those of you that are interested in this discussion and what I'm referring to, you probably need to watch his video first. I will attach this video to his, so there should be a link, actually I think underneath the screen that you see me on right now. Essentially, not to recap his entire argument, but essentially Jordan presents the idea that he has difficulty, actually he doesn't believe in the virgin birth because the idea that Mary encountered an angel and had such a powerful moment in her life and then gave birth to a child that came to her through God, that 30 years later when Christ actually began his ministry, it doesn't comport with his idea of how she should be acting, knowing how he came into this world for her to go out and try to restrain him and keep him from starting his ministry. And that's not exactly how it's worded in Scripture or how Jordan presents it. So again, go watch his video. Jordan, first thing I want to do is kind of call you out on something that I believe might be true, though you don't say it. And I think one of your main reasons deep down for having a hard time with this story is, or this part of Scripture is, you have come to a point in your journey where you no longer believe that Christ was fully God and fully human. You believe he was pure human, potentially inspired by God, but essentially fully human. And I think one of the main reasons you probably don't gel with the virgin birth is for you to accept that as the truth. You would actually have to, that kind of bites at your argument that he's fully human and doesn't have any deity connections other than just being inspired. But since you don't mention that, I just want to throw that out there and see if that may be an accurate perception on my part or if I'm way off. What I want to do here, since you basically say that there's no technical reasons, there's purely a speculative and subjective reason for your failure to believe in this, that these 2 accounts of Mary being with Christ as he was brought into this world and then 30 years later acting in a way that doesn't comport with how he was brought into this world, I want to subjectively offer a counter argument, and I'm assuming so long as my argument is a reasonable one, that it's just as valid and worthy of consideration as yours. Because I didn't find your argument to be completely baseless. I see the contrast that you demonstrate. I had 3 main points to come back at you with. They're all somewhat related, but they're distinguishable enough that I delineate them into 3 points. The first one is the passage of time. Most scholars that I've looked into agree that Mary was quite a young female at the time of the Immaculate Conception. Most people say close to 15 is probably accurate. 30 years goes by before Christ even starts his ministry, so essentially something very miraculous happened to her at the age of 15. She raises this son, and full 30 years passes before he does much of anything that we can see recorded in Scripture, save for when he was 12 and taught in the temple briefly. But so with that passage of time, her memory of this account of this angel and this event does fade a little bit. It doesn't lose its power necessarily, but the further away from a powerful event you get, I think, the more propensity it has for maybe not retaining all of its impact. Now, I don't think when she went to restrain her son that she all of a sudden changed her mind and thought, well, even though he was brought into this world in a miraculous, powerful way, he no longer actually has a purpose on this earth. I think she just feared public opinion. I think she wanted to make sure that he was fulfilling his destiny, but probably in the way that she pictured him doing it, not in the way that it happened. And that leads me to part two. Point two is, as a parent, I can tell you, it's a cliche term, but it was never more a reality until I became a parent. Kids don't come with a handbook, especially the Messiah. I mean, she was not given a handbook on how to raise Christ. Questions probably entered her mind like, okay, I obviously need to provide food, shelter, and clothing for this child, but do I direct him in any way to offer him guidance and counsel, or does he just automatically know those things because he's from the Father? Where are her boundaries in being a mother? Furthermore, she didn't have the full picture of what Christ was going to do. His own disciples walked with him for 3 years and didn't know or understand what he was actually going to do. So, as a parent, she probably was trying to encourage what her idea of him fulfilling his mission was. And when she saw him doing things that didn't comport with what her idea of what he should be doing, as any mother would, she wanted to correct his behavior, even though she had no right to correct the Messiah. Again, where do you draw that line, that boundary between being his parent and understanding who he is? I can tell you right now, if God had appeared the day before my kids were born and said, hey, your twins are going to serve an awesome and mighty purpose, and that was essentially all I was told, but I was not told what that meant, I might, as a parent, encourage behaviors, activities, learning that all fit into my idea of what their destiny was going to be. And it may be way different from what God actually intended. If I thought, for instance, my son was going to be president, I might encourage all kinds of activities and learning that foster a political career. Whereas he might be destined to preach and roam the countryside in nothing but the clothes on his back. And I would have done him a disservice because I was encouraging a completely different destiny. My third point, in my opinion, is the strongest point. It's one I sort of shared with you in a private message, but I felt like as a public discussion this might be worth bringing out to everybody. And I think this is where the main strength of my argument back at you lies. So, you and I know Christ, and we know how his work was finished. We know we have an advantage that Mary didn't have at this time. But yet you and I also behave in ways that don't comport with who we know Christ to be. Even though we know Christ, we know his teaching, we know how he fulfilled his ministry, we have all the advantages Mary did not have, yet you and I both, to this day, act in ways that do not gel with what we know. So my main question back to you, my main challenge on this entire thing is, why should Mary be any different from you and I? She's fully human. She didn't come into this world in a miraculous way like Christ did. She certainly didn't have a preview of who he was going to be and how he was going to fulfill that ministry. So why are you elevating her to this level of accountability that you and I, even though we know what happens, don't even elevate ourselves to? This is The Edge, signing off for now. I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope you receive this video in the way that it was intended.